Like, I don't understand why people are so upset about the potential of making this deal.
Yes, sir, there she goes.
Hello and welcome to episode 135 of Section 138. I'm your host, Mark Cully, as always, joined by Bryson and Jacob. How are you guys?
Doing good, Mark. We're coming off of our MidSeason Awards podcast where we recorded early, so I'm happy to do this back to back. And of course, only two games to talk about, but that's okay. And then we have trade talk, so we're good.
Yeah, we had an unexpected rain out last night, so two-game series against Baltimore, and it got postponed to, I think, was it September 1st?
September 11th.
11th, okay. So we'll be looking forward to that game when it happens. Another easy game down the line for the Blue Jays, but now they head into a series against the Rays. And you mentioned the midseason award episode. We've been teasing it a little bit, but it's coming out July 14th. Get excited for it. It's going to be pretty awesome. Jacob, how are you?
Doing good. It was fun to record yesterday, and there's a little blooper in there if you guys want to look towards the end where I almost broke my microphone. But yeah, it's been fun. Season's underway, and unfortunately, only two games against the Orioles. Now going into a tough season or series against the Rays, but overall, I think it's been a good first half for the Blue Jays, and I'm excited to talk about them.
Yeah, this series against the Rays is going to be, I think, pretty pivotal for the Blue Jays. Like, head-to-head matchups, of course, are always pivotal. But when you look at the positioning of the Blue Jays right now, if they win 2 of 3, they're, I think, 4.5 games back in the wild card race. If they lose 2 of 3, they are, I don't know, math is failing me, but they're further behind. So you look at this pivotal series, it sets up where the Blue Jays are going to be in terms of the trade deadline. So it's a really important series coming up. But the Blue Jays, they split the series in Baltimore. They lose 7-5 on Tuesday. They win 10-2 on Wednesday. And I think the biggest takeaway from these two games, at least for me, is Hyun Jin Ryu. We've talked about his struggles before. It's been incredibly concerning, but he came out on Wednesday. He went 5 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, got his ERA net down now to 3.56. That was, of course, really good to see. And we've talked about how necessary it is for him to be rock in the Blue Jays rotation, and to have him come out and do what he did on Wednesday night, even if it is against a team like the Orioles, you got to be really happy with that performance.
Hey, even if it was against the Orioles, that can be a good momentum shifter for Ryu. And I mean, the thing is, I saw people say, why did he only go 5 innings, and why are we considering that a good start? But I would say that if you're able to limit the damage, then that's a good start. And I mean, only 5 innings, okay, he just barely qualified for the win. He had 5 hits allowed, 2 walks and 7 strikeouts. And the 7 strikeouts I'm highlighting because he's able to get out of damage. He's able to stay in the game long enough, and it was a very humid day. Like, if you look in the dugout after that game, or after his last outing, it looked like he just jumped in a pool. So it was a very tough it was a tough outing for him in terms of the heat and everything, but he was able to get things done, and limited a not a great Baltimore Orioles offense to only 1 run, but he still was able to limit a team full of, I would say, major league caliber players, and it was overall a good start. I think that was his last start before the All-Star break. Blue Jays have, if I'm not mistaken, Manoah, Stripling, and Matz set to go against the Rays. At least that's what Sportsnet has it scheduled. So maybe if there's some changes, I don't know. But it looks like Ryu is now done for the first half of the season. I would say overall it was a decent first half. I mean, he did struggle over the last month and a half, 2 months, but he is still your ace. He's able to bounce back and say, okay, I've not been the greatest. I've had some rough outings. And even there was one outing against Baltimore where he was cruising through, I think, 7, and then allowed 4 earned runs in the 7th inning. And that ended up kind of messing up his order, or his outing, even though he went like 15 straight retired batters. But yeah, a good start for him. Then we see rest of the Blue Jays, their bullpen is able to do what it needs to. Trevor Richards with the scoreless outing. Anthony Kay only allowed 1 earned run in an inning and a third, and then Tim Meza, Rafael Delis closed out the game. Overall, good. I mean, Blue Jays needed a win desperately after that loss in Game 1, and they did it. The offense was there. It picked up their pitchers who did the job, and you know what? I mean, I wish yesterday's game didn't get rained out, although I have zero say in that. But you kind of feel as if the momentum was on their side. They could have got that win in the last game before the Rays series, but still, I would say that it was a good start. It was a good game overall. The offense was very good, and if you're a fan of Hyun Jin Ryu, which I'm sure every Blue Jay fan is, I would say that you should be happy about this start and just we'll see what he can do. He's going to take the All-Star break off. I don't believe he was named to be a pitcher there, so we'll see him hopefully in that first series back in I don't know a week or two. But yeah, it's overall I'm very happy with his start.
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a kind of a sigh of relief. It was relieving to see him kind of revert back to what we are used to seeing from him and what we expect to see from him. And that was, of course, not a lot of earned runs, high number of strikeouts, and a decent amount of hits. And then, of course, that's exactly what he did. He went 5 innings, allowed 5 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. That is a lot more like a Hyun Jin Ryu start. And, even if it was against the Orioles, that's okay because I don't know if you guys remember too. I think that was his third start this year against Baltimore already. And we know how the Jays kind of started playing Baltimore later on in the season. So he's seen this team 3 times now. And his last start at Camden Yards, it was good. It was 7 innings, 1 earned run. And that's kind of where we were talking about how maybe Ryu's back, like maybe he looks good now. And then his next outing or his next start was against the Orioles again. And this was now back in Buffalo on June 26th. And he allowed 4 earned runs in 6 2/3. So he started off good. That was the start where he kind of allowed all of his runs later on in the game. And then we know his bad start on Canada Day as well to the Mariners, where he allowed 4 earned runs in 4 innings. I believe that was the shortest outing of the season as well, or April 25th actually was against Tampa. But either way, that's also when he left the game injured. So that was pretty much his worst start of the year. And then he comes out on July 7th, which is his most recent start. And like you guys mentioned, he was a lot dominant as well. He threw 86 pitches in 5 innings, obviously not as efficient as you would have hoped, but just because of how much he struggled, I think we'll take that from Hyun Jin Ryu. And maybe it was the Danny Jansen effect a little bit. I don't want to put it all on Danny Jansen, but I mean, now the numbers are starting to favor it a little bit more than usual, or a little bit more than what we originally thought. But I mean, Danny Jansen's back. Whatever works for Ryu to, I guess, pitch well, that's what the Jays are going to do. So Danny Jansen's back. Maybe that's also going to have a good impact on Ryu past the trade deadline. But yeah, this was a massive start for Ryu, and it's good news. And you hope that this can continue past the All-Star break. Like you mentioned, Jacob, that was his last start before the All-Star break. So now he gets a couple of, I guess, about a week now to relax. And perhaps the Jays maybe adjust the rotation a little bit just because of all the lefties they have. Maybe they want to start balancing it. So who knows when we're going to see Hyun Jin Ryu pitch again, but it's obviously going to be in about a week. And, that game alone was good for the Jays as well. He got run support, Hyun Jin Ryu did. It was a 10-2 final, and a lot of people were contributing. Bo Bichette, 3 RBIs. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., 2 RBIs. Kevin Biggio, 2 RBIs, and a few other guys had an RBI as well. So it was good to see that the Jays finally got to Matt Harvey early this time, because the last time he pitched against the Jays, it didn't look too good after about 3 or 4 innings, and the Jays finally got to him near the end of the outing. So the Jays started off good. It started off with a 3-run first inning, and that's when pretty much the Jays, I think it started off with almost the bases loaded, and it was kind of a weird play in the first inning. That's when the umpire called it out. Oh, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hit it to center field, and you can clearly see the ball drop, or the outfielder completely drop it, which kind of changed the entire inning. And then, of course, the Jays took a advantage of that, and that ended off with a ground rule double from Kevin Biggio. So it was a good start. 10-2. You guys mentioned Trevor Richards as well, makes his Blue Jays debut, a scoreless outing in 1 inning of work. And, of course, yes, Rafael Dolis closes the game, but it was also 10-2. So you would hope that nothing would have happened that would have make things go in the opposite direction. And it was kind of a bummer yesterday for the game to get rained out, just because you're coming off a 10-2 win, and now it goes in as an off day. It's going to be made up as a doubleheader later on in the season. And now the Jays have one more series to go before the All-Star break. They have the Tampa Bay Rays at Tropicana Field, and it's not going to be easy. But based on what we've seen so far, starting off in the series, which was on July 6th against Baltimore, which ended up being a 2-game series, the Jays only made up a game, or half of a game, in the wild card standings. And obviously part of that is because the game got rained out yesterday. But now, as they stand, they're ahead of the Mariners basically by, I think, 1% in terms of their win percentage. I think it's 524, and Seattle's is 523. So the Jays sit 3.5 games back. They're currently chasing Oakland, and of course they're chasing Tampa Bay as well. So it's going to be a crucial series and an important weekend. And if all things go as planned, or the best they can go, perhaps the Jays could be in a wild card spot by the All-Star break. I believe it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, ideally they take 2 or 3. They could even sweep. I don't wanna get ahead of ourselves, but I don't think that's likely to happen, but if it does, I would be over the moon. Um, on Ryu, I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I mean, this is one good start, and I don't know, I still have underlying concerns about him. And I've said this before. I don't know if we actually had a full blown conversation about this, because Jacob, you weren't here, and you had brought it up about Danny Jansen being behind the plate for Ryu. But I'm skeptical of the impact that Ryu has behind the plate. I know you look at the numbers, and he does have better numbers with Jansen behind the plate. You look at um, with Jansen catching Ryu has a 3.13 ERA. Opponents are batting have an OPS of 681 against him. Reese McGuire, it's a 4.58 ERA, OPS of 734. Riley Adams, it's a 4.5 ERA, OPS of 806. So the numbers, just based off that, are a lot better for Danny Jansen behind the plate. But you also look at the fact that Riley Adams has caught 2 of Ryu's starts. McGuire has caught 3 of Ryu's starts. I think it's a small sample size, and I'm really skeptical that the reason that he was struggling so much, the reason that he had a 5.35 ERA over his last, what was it, 6 starts, um, was because of one catcher. I'm really skeptical of that. So I'm still concerned. I think the most likely explanation for his struggles is sticky stuff. And I know people have gotten upset at me when I've mentioned this, but I think that Ryu probably was using, whether it's rosin and sunscreen or pine tar, because he is a pinpoint command guy. He was using it for command, which is not what MLB legislated against it for. They legislated against it because they wanted people to stop using it to increase their spin rate. Um, but I think banning it hurts Ryu because now he's struggling with his command. We saw over that 6 game span before this game against Baltimore that he had 13 walks and 16 strikeouts compared to vastly different numbers in his first 10 starts of the season. In his first 10 starts of the season, he had 8 walks and 58 strikeouts. So vastly different numbers there. And I really think there's more to it than just a catcher behind the plate. I'm really skeptical that that's the reason behind his struggles and now all of a sudden his miraculous improvement. I think it's just, you have a start against Baltimore, you probably get a little bit lucky. I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I'm sorry to bring a damper on things, but that's how I feel about this.
No, that's a fair point, honestly. I mean, unfortunately, the way Major League Baseball handled the whole sticky stuff situation was wrong. There should have, I mean, maybe instead of banning everything completely, change things up a little bit. Don't just say absolutely nothing because I think who was it? I think it was Tyler Glasnow. The first start that that he had after the sticky stuff incident or the banning ended up injuring himself. And I saw a video. I think it was a doctor that like reviews sports injuries, and in the video, Glasnow basically said the gripping of the ball without the sticky stuff was harder because you now don't have that thing that you can rely on, and it was like a thing in his elbow that ended up getting strained. But anyways, point is like the sticky stuff does help a little bit, and there was actually legitimacy to Tyler Glasnow's claims. But unfortunately, with Ryu, and I think a lot of good pitchers, is you start to wonder, were they only good because of sticky stuff? Now, I mean, Ryu is a good pitcher, and I don't think that we can really take that away from him. But like you said, he's not going to blow you away with his fastball. Maybe 95 at best, but he's a guy that he'll throw a variety of different pitches in a variety of different locations, and sometimes like you need good command in order to do that. And that's why I feel like there is probably some legitimacy to those claims. And now I know a lot of people don't want to think that their favorite pitcher or the pitcher on their team was cheating, but or not necessarily cheating, but using this. Like obviously there are people that went too far using spider tack or any of those other things, but I mean Garrett Cole, that whole interview was pretty funny, but it's a tough situation. And the thing with Danny Jansen is when I said that, I didn't necessarily think that Danny Jansen is like the savior for Ryu, but I feel like it's more of maybe just a comfort and a superstitious thing. Now that's probably not the most reasonable or hard hitting type of analytics, but the way I see it is it's just the two of them are very comfortable together and they've caught each other or Jansen's caught Ryu almost up until his injury every single start. So to me, it just seemed as if Danny Jansen was going to get the call up and ended up getting the call just because the Blue Jays do trust him with Ryu and they kind of wanted to see if it can turn things around. Do I think it's the end of it now that he had a good start against Baltimore? Absolutely not. Going into after the Blue Jays post All-Star break schedule, they have a 3-game series with the Rangers, a 3-game series with the Red Sox, then 3 games with the Mets, 3 games against the Red Sox again, and then 2 games against the Royals to end July. So I mean, relatively easy month, I would say. Ryu's probably going to make a couple more starts, probably one in the Rangers series and then maybe in the Mets series. I mean, the Mets are relative. They're doing. I mean, they're doing okay. Like I wouldn't say it's a ridiculously difficult schedule for Ryu and the Blue Jays as a whole, but I'm more interested to see how he handles that. The post All Star break, you have a bit of time to regroup. Except for missing what was it, like 1 or 2 starts in April or May. He's pretty much been healthy all season. So now give him some time to regroup. You sit out for the All Star game, the All Star break. Really, you come back and you have some starts against relatively easier teams. I mean, in July or two, yeah. So basically, like the month is not too difficult. I think it will. It'll be interesting to see how he's able to regroup against them. Do I think that he'll be the 250, 260, whatever pitcher he was? I'd hope that. I don't think that's realistic, maybe over a full season, unless there's a complete turnaround. But I would say, yeah, like this, I feel like the All Star break is going to come at the perfect time for Ryu. Get some time off, figure things out with your catcher. If there was sticky stuff, learn to adjust without it because pitchers have to do that. And we'll see if he's able to rebound. But yeah, he's gonna be needed if the Blue Jays, with the additions they're making, are gonna push for a wild card or especially even a pennant.
Yeah. I think Mark, yeah, I think you're right about the fact that we still aren't out of the woods yet. And I completely agree with you on that. Obviously, it is one start. Now you're heading into the All-Star break. He's going to cool down just because he won't be pitching. And then now he's got to get going again. But, I know the sticky stuff thing is quite a topic of conversation. I think that's to say the least. And I think everyone kind of, well, when people are struggling, especially since the crackdown started at some point in June, a lot of people are obviously looking at the splits and who's been affected the most, right? We're looking at the Garrett Cole numbers, Aroldis Chapman. We spoke about him, I think, last week about how he had a 22.5 ERA ever since the crackdown on foreign substances, and there's been a whole bunch of people that have been affected by it. And of course, Ryu conveniently starts struggling when the crackdown begins. However, I still am not sold on the fact that it's just the sticky stuff that is causing him to wear down, or even the fact that he uses a lot of sticky stuff to begin with, because obviously everyone is looking at this and everyone is kind of looking at the spin rates before and after. And I think Hyun Jin Ryu, ever since the crackdown started, he had a dip of 19 RPM or fewer after the breaking balls were up by a similar amount. So not much of a difference. So basically, some of the results that he has shown since the crackdown aren't exactly a major difference before the subs or before the crackdown began. And then of course, when you want to look at it, then what's the problem? And Mark, you were going over his metrics as well and kind of how he's on the decline. And I think it's a little bit more him on the decline than it's him with sticky stuff. And one thing too, and I don't know if you guys remember, based off of what happened last year, but there were a few times last year where he got more than 5 days of rest. He got an extra day of rest before or in between starts. And of course, last year, we all know what happened with how there was the shutdown. They came back in July. It was a rapid spring training. They weren't even playing games. They're playing simulated games against each other at home ballparks. So the injuries, and even the last year, the injuries were up. People were concerned about pitchers staying healthy. That was part of the reason why the DH was implemented last year for the National League as well. And when Ryu had that extra day of rest, because I have his splits here as well, he is more of an effective pitcher. After 6 or more days of rest between starts, he has an ERA of 2.84. If he's on 5 days of rest, he has an ERA of 3.36. What I'm trying to say is maybe Ryu needs that extra day of rest down the line. And I know right now the Jays aren't in that position because of their lack of pitching depth. I completely understand that. And really, who are you going to do that to right now? Who do you feel like, or who are you going to send out there to give Ryu an extra day of rest right now? Currently, where the Jays sit, it's not possible. So whatever that means in terms of his splits, maybe it's empty numbers, maybe it's something, but pretty much it goes back to the fact that what we've been talking about all year is that the Jays need pitching help. Perhaps this also leads to a reason to get another starter, to give Ryu that extra day of rest. Not every time through the order, but that odd time throughout the order for the rest of the year. Maybe that extra day of rest is going to help Ryu. Maybe it will be, because I'm still not a firm believer that he is using, or the sticky stuff crackdown is affecting him as much as we think. I'm not saying you guys do too, but just compared to other pitchers, obviously that's not the case. But I just feel like it's more on the point that he's getting older. And this goes back to what you said again, Mark, in terms of how his numbers are slowly declining. Maybe the Jays need an extra starter. Maybe they need to give Ryu more rest in the second half of the season, just for someone who's getting up there. He's in his mid-30s now. And I know the Jays are currently 3 games back, or 3.5 games back of that second wildcard spot. But I just think it all goes back to the same point, that this team needs help. And maybe I'm overreacting. I could be, for sure. Maybe it's just something that he just has to figure out. Maybe he is starting to figure it out because Danny Jansen's back. There's a whole bunch of possibilities, and nobody really knows what's going on. I think this also has a lot of concern to the front office. Can you just imagine, obviously the money that the Jays gave him, it was what, almost 80 million in 4 years. What's going on, because his decline hasn't been slowly, and it hasn't been steady. It has been rapid, and it kind of took a complete nosedive, and a lot of people are just out of questions and out of answers. So I don't know where they go from here. You definitely hope that he can figure it out. It definitely ended off on the right note for the first half of the season, but perhaps the solution in the second half of the season is to maybe push him a few times and maybe give him an extra day of rest, because clearly his splits have shown that, even going back to last year when he was on that extra day of rest. And I remember everyone was talking about that at the time, of how Ryu liked that extra day of rest. Maybe that the Jays kind of loop back to that in the second half of the season.
We're all hoping for the best in the second half. Like we said, you can't understate the impact that Ryu has on the rotation. Um, you mentioned the possibility of acquiring a starter. The Blue Jays acquired a reliever this past week. They acquired Trevor Richards from the Brewers in exchange for Rowdy Tellez. They also got prospect Bowden Francis from the Brewers in that deal. Um, the It's exactly what the Blue Jays need to do. It's a move to solidify the bullpen, and this move, in addition to the move for Adam Simber, in addition to a lesser extent the move to acquire Jacob Barnes, this is all within the plan for the Blue Jays in terms of acquiring guys who can solidify the bullpen, make those 18 games that the bullpen has lost. I'm sure that count is higher at this point. Make those go away, make those stop happening in the second half. The thing I like most about this deal is that, and the other deals the Blue Jays have made, but especially this deal, is that it's not just focused on this year. You look at this deal, you get a prospect, Bowden Francis. He has good numbers. He's a top 25 prospect in the Brewers system. He just added a slider this year in AAA, and his numbers back it up that he's made pretty big improvements. He's kind of projected as a back end of the rotation guy in the majors. And if you're getting that guy as a toss in a deal where you only give up Rowdy Tellez, I think that's really good. I think that's pretty awesome. And I like the fact that the Blue Jays are not just building to win this year, they're building to win down the line. And I think that's my favorite thing about this deal. But Trevor Richards, we've already seen him. Maybe not a guy you go to in high leverage situations, but he's going to improve the bullpen, and that's all you can ask for.
See, I also like the creativity behind these because look at it. The first deal with Joe Panic, I think it's fair to say he was not returning next season. Came back on a minor league deal this year. I think it's fair to say that he was not coming back. Blue Jays get a good reliever that they have team control over for a couple years out of him. Look at Rowdy Tellez. No disrespect to Tellez, but it's just unfortunately he hasn't been what he was in 2020. He was struggling this year, and there's not really any room for him. I mean, with the way the Blue Jays are handling their designated hitter spot, Guerrero's obviously always going to play first base. It's either Tellez is in the lineup as the DH and Gurriel or Grichuk or somebody's not playing, or Tellez is not playing. So it's just they didn't have room for him, and they were able to get something out of him. So I like both of these deals, and it does solidify the bullpen. Honestly, it truly does. We saw, I think it was Trent Thornton go get sent down to the minors a couple of days ago. Maybe they stretch him out as a starter. I know he made a lot of starts in 2019. See if they can do that. I'm not entirely sure with that situation, but I don't. In terms of the rotation, I'm not really sure if they will make any moves. I think it might just be bullpen moves because Ryu has been struggling a little bit, but he's still relatively dependable. Like a 3.50 ERA, I would still take out of pretty much anybody, even if if you're expecting more out of him. But a 3.50 ERA is still not bad objectively. Then you have Manoah, Ray, Stripling, Matz, so that like they have starters that they can rely on. And unless maybe you don't carry somebody like you put Ross Stripling in the bullpen, which is not the right move in my opinion, or you get rid of Steven Matz, then there's really no room for a starter. I'm not saying that I wouldn't take a Max Scherzer or any type of starter, but it's just I don't know if there's necessarily room for a starter. But yeah, I like these bullpen moves, kind of under the radar if you're not necessarily covering the team or you're not a fan of the team, but they're ones that could end up working. And you look at 2016 again with Jason Grilly, Joaquin Benoit. I think were two of maybe a couple moves they made, and they helped them down the line. Especially they were guys that were able to turn things around. And I mean, Trevor Richards this year hasn't been terrible. I mean, his ERA is 3.58, which is better than his 4.33 career ERA. So I would I would say he's having a better year this season. Let's see what he's able to do in this bullpen, and the bullpen's in desperate need of arms. I mean, I think it was Ryan Barucki put on the 60-day IL. I think I believe it was Thomas Hatch is getting closer now, but unfortunately, Barucki is a little bit further down the line than we had hoped and than we'd expected. But these moves, I think, they'll solidify them not necessarily to bridge to when those guys come back off the IL, but also just be good guys this season and next season. Because, like you said, this team it's not in a win now mode. I don't think that even if it was in a win now mode, they would win. Like, I mean, I hope they win, obviously, but the Blue Jays, they're still in it for the long haul, and it's good to see that not only are they making moves this season and last season for that season to benefit them, but they're also looking forward to the future to say, who can we depend on next year or in 2 years? And they're making those moves, and they're ones that really aren't costing them a lot. So they're moves I think that you really can't dislike.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, Ryan Barucki is going to be back soon. He's currently rehabbing in AAA Buffalo. He was just moved to the 60-day IL to make room on the 40-man roster, so he is eligible to come off. It's either going to be sometime this weekend or it'll be the first game after the All-Star break. He'll be back, and of course, Thomas Hatch is currently in AAA. He was already activated off the injured list. And the one with the setback, unfortunately, was Julian Merriweather, who I guess they kind of just revealed that he had a setback, but apparently he is going to resume throwing soon. So that's another guy who could potentially be back right after the All-Star break. So things are looking up in terms of the bullpen getting healthy. We're getting to that point. It's just taking a little bit longer than usual. But, going back to the trade as well, it's not a bad move at all. And I think you want to go back to that Joe Panic trade, and we'll start with Rowdy Tellez, is that the fact that the Jays do have Corey Dickerson now, who is a left-handed at bat, who is going to be back or hopefully going to be back at some point this year. I mentioned it at the time. I think that kind of solidified how the Jays felt about Rowdy Tellez, and I think that kind of put an end to his tenure here, just because unfortunately he's been given opportunity after opportunity, and he just hasn't adjusted to the big league level. When you want to look at 2020 60-game season, he was hurt for a good chunk of it near the end. Not a lot of people are taking anything away from that season, rightfully so. But going back to 2019 as well with Rowdy Tellez, he had to go back down to the minors at some point as well. And he's just never gotten over that hump to adjust to being an MLB hitter. So you wish him nothing but the best in Milwaukee. He is on the MLB roster over there now. So good luck to him. But with Trevor Richards, it's a good move to acquire Richards and Bowden Francis, like Mark, you were mentioning, to get those two players for someone like Rowdy Tellez. Richards, I don't believe he pitched against the Jays this year when he started the year with Tampa. This is his third team now this year. So he goes over, he starts with Tampa, not the greatest at 4.50 ERA in 6 games. He goes to Milwaukee, plays 15 games, a 3.20 ERA, so kind of turns it around a little bit in Milwaukee, and now he's with the Jays. One pretty good, solid appearance to start, and you have to imagine that he'd be a good option later on in the games, like you mentioned, regardless if it's the 7th or maybe 8th inning. It's all going to depend on what Charlie Montoyo is thinking. So Trevor Richards, a good deal, and it's one of many to go. And you were also mentioning, Jacob, the fact of the starting rotation, even going back to the Ryu thing. If the Jays do get a starter, what does that mean for someone like Ross Stripling or going to the bullpen? And I was one who supported Ross Stripling eventually going to the bullpen. But however, over the course of the last 2 weeks, as he continues to pitch well, and even Mark going off the board in our midseason awards, choosing him as a comeback player of the year, or best reliever of the year, whatever award it was. Um, I think he has earned the right to stay in the rotation for the time being, especially maybe even down the line, because this turnaround has been dramatic in a good way. The question I have now for if you guys want to think about this as well, is what does that mean for someone like Steven Matz? Is he going to be in the rotation past the trade deadline? And I don't think you can guarantee that he will be. I know that he's been, mediocre. We know what we're getting out of Steven Matz, but if the Jays go out and upgrade in the starting rotation, for me, he's the odd man out right now to either go to the bullpen or just, who knows what happens to Steven Matz. But as of now as well, the move kind of impacts the bullpen in terms of the long man. Anthony Kay is going to be the long man for the time being, and that kind of puts an end to Trent Thornton in the bullpen for now. I'm sure he'll be back up at some point this year, and he goes back down to AAA Buffalo. So that's kind of the ripple effect that creates there. But Trevor Richards is a good, solid addition, and it's someone that we all kind of know pretty well based off of his 3 years in Tampa. So a pretty good, career so far, a 4.28 ERA with Tampa in those 3 years. But Jacob, you mentioned his career ERA as well. So this year in particular, he's definitely having a better season than usual. And you just hope that the turnaround he had in Milwaukee back in the earlier part of the season, you hope that translates in Toronto, and you hope that it maybe even gets better. So I'm happy with the deal they made. And of course, you wish nothing but the best for Rowdy Tellez. It just didn't work out here. And, that's one out of many the Jays still have to make in terms of moves, and they still have until the end of July to do so.
Yeah, mentioning the starters, I really don't see the Blue Jays getting a starter. It hasn't been their area of need as of late. They haven't really expressed interest in any starters, so I don't see it happening. I think, the guys that we have seen them rumored to be involved with, besides the guys they've already acquired, we got a rumor earlier today that the Cubs are selling, and Arash Madani saying that the Blue Jays are in on Craig Kimbrel. That's someone they've talked about. That's someone they have interest in. He's obviously fits the bill of what the Blue Jays need. He's a reliever. He is one of the best in the game. He's been doing it for years and years and years. Some people argue he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Who knows? But that doesn't matter for the Blue Jays. He's just a really good reliever. Another guy that doesn't really fit the bill of what the Blue Jays need, but apparently they could be interested in him. Take it with a grain of salt because it's from John Heyman. But Nelson Cruz, the designated hitter for the Twins, apparently he could be a target for the Blue Jays. Who knows how um, truthworthy that is, how accurate it is. But again, Nelson Cruz, Craig Kimbrel, two guys that we've seen. We haven't seen the Blue Jays in on starters besides that one mention of Jose Barrios from I think it was John Morosi months ago. So I'm skeptical that the Blue Jays will add a starter unless it is someone who's under team control for a while. Like if it's a trade, another trade with the Marlins, they have a lot of great young pitching prospects and pitchers that are already in the majors who are under team control for a while. I'm skeptical that the Blue Jays go out and do much besides that. What do you guys make of? Let's start with the Nelson Cruz rumor because it is kind of off the wall, and a lot of people have not been happy with it. Because I mean, you look at the Blue Jays offense, it is one of the best offenses in Major League Baseball. Like that is not the weakness of this team. Yet Nelson Cruz would only improve that. He doesn't even improve fielding because he's a DH, but 41, 42 years old. He has great numbers, 304 batting average, 160 OPS plus this season. He's on a 1-year, $13 million deal with the Twins. To me, the Blue Jays don't need to make this deal, but it makes sense. Like everyone's complaining about this deal, but to me, like you can only improve the bullpen so much. And by improving the offense, by scoring more runs per game, that's going to help the bullpen. Like, I don't understand why people are so upset about the potential of making this deal when it is going to mean less blown games by the bullpen because you're going to be scoring more runs. Like, yes, it might not directly address the area of need for the Blue Jays, but again, they've already made 2 deals there. They might be making a third or fourth with Craig Kimbrel, Richard Rodriguez. At some point, there's a max limit of what you can do. Nelson Cruz is still going to improve the team. He's still going to make the team better, and I don't oppose that deal. Does it maybe not make sense from a long-term, winning schedule point of view? No. He's under contract only for this year. Blue Jays are going to have to give up something and might not get much back in terms of if they only get Cruz. But I don't understand why people are so opposed to this deal when it would improve the team. It would mean less blown games from the bullpen. Even if Nelson Cruz doesn't pitch, he's still going to improve the team.
See, I would argue that the improvement would be very minimal. That's the reason why I wouldn't say, okay, if the Blue Jays get him, I wouldn't complain. I'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever, as long as the return's not huge, or as long as the return for the Twins is not massive. But I don't see this making any sense, because if you have a DH that's only going to DH, a guy that's only going to sit on the bench and hit, what does that mean for your flexibility with the outfield? Now, I know maybe Nelson Cruz is a better hitter than Randall Grichuk, but you take him out of the lineup. Now, Grichuk's not playing, or he's not playing a lot more or he's out of the lineup a lot more than he normally is, or Gurriel's out of the lineup a lot more, and then Santiago Espinal, the Jonathan Davis, like all these guys are going to eventually see a reduced playing time. Now, yes, granted, you're getting a good hitter, but I don't think it makes any sense. And especially, like, what happens if the Blue Jays go to the National League? Cruz is out of the game, or out of pretty much that entire series, or as long as they're playing there. So it to me, it doesn't really make sense, especially when your offense is already extremely good. Now, yes, those extra couple runs would benefit the team, and I wouldn't say that it's an awful thing to do, but I don't think acquiring a hitter is what they need right now at all, unless you're getting a bench bat or a utility guy. I mean, it's just, to me, if Nelson Cruz could, in theory, play anywhere on the field, or at least somewhere on the field, okay, you can justify it. But just to say we're getting a bat, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think, where do you fit him in the lineup as well? Like, it's maybe middle of the lineup after Springer and Hernandez, something like that is not necessarily a bad option, but still, I don't think it makes any sense at all. If they do it, if this happens, I don't think it's likely, but if it happens, obviously I'll welcome him, and if he helps the team, then that's good. But if you're thinking of ways to improve the team, I don't think that getting a hitter is what you do. You get a pitcher, or nothing. Like, I mean, the only way I think you improve the team offensively is if you somehow get maybe a bottom of the order guy that can turn the lineup over. I guess that might be an area of concern, but in terms of power, the Blue Jays have it with Springer, who in a limited at bats is still hitting a couple of home runs. I think he has 5 or 6 at this point, but Guerrero's among the league leaders. Springer, or not Springer, Simeon's among the league leaders. Teoscar Hernandez is down the line in league leaders, but he's like tied for, I think it was like 30th or something. But like, you have guys that can hit home runs. So it doesn't really make sense for me to get a guy that's going to hit for power, only if it means hitting. Like, I think the best move to make if you want to improve the overall team is to improve either your defense or your pitching, and just a hitter, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I love it. I love this rumor, and I really hope that something like this happens, because the point that I just have to agree with Mark on this. Like, how much more, like, there's only so much you could do to the bullpen, and the Jays are on the right track. They're nowhere close to being finished with it, but why not improve the overall team? Why not improve the lineup? This guy, Nelson Cruz, we know Nelson Cruz so long. He's been in the game for so long, 17 years and counting. A 2.1 WAR this year, an OPS of 925, an OPS plus of 157. That's insane. And, if you want to talk about the impact he makes on the lineup, regardless if the Jays need it or not, I think that kind of sums it up right there. And in terms of where would he play? Well, the Jays, they're obviously going to find a way to make him fit in the lineup. And, there's still people on the roster that could easily be moved. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I don't, who would it be? I don't know for sure, but there's definitely people on this roster that is definitely not a lock to stay on the team past the trade deadline. So either way, no matter what goes on from there, yes, it was a John Heyman report. Yes, he also mentioned Oakland. And when you want to look at the Oakland lineup, he obviously is a better fit in Oakland in terms of what the Oakland Athletics need. But if the Jays are going to pull the trigger on this, or if they are interested in it, why not go for it? I don't understand, if you make the argument, yes, they don't need it. Yes, the lineup's full. Yes, he's a DH, but There's so many of that, but the Jays would find a way to put him in the lineup. You're not thinking about a National League interleague series with me. You're thinking about putting him in the lineup, and obviously the DH spot, yes, that kind of sticks it with him in terms of him being a DH every day, unfortunately, but the lineup's better on paper and the team gets even better. I mean, we were talking about the bullpen this year, how many times leads have been blown. You can increase the offense by getting Cruz, and you can also increase the bullpen at the same time. I'm not saying the Jays go all out and completely unleash their farm system for this, but based on the front office, they are cautious. They make deals accordingly, and I think they've proven that year after year that they're not going to do that, which is why I completely trust Shapiro and Atkins once again. I think I've said that before. So if they're really going to entertain this, go for it. I have no problem with the rumor at all. I have no problem with him being a possible Blue Jay. Yes, it's pretty much a rental because he's here for only the rest of 2021. But I mean, that also maybe diminishes his value a little bit, even though the Jays would still have to give up something decent in return. The Twins are selling. They've been a tire fire all year. We know that people like Jose Barrios, like you mentioned, the Jays rumor mark earlier on in the season. There's even reports of the New York Mets being interested in Josh Donaldson. So it looks like the Twins are going to be a seller, and that obviously fits in with the Cubs as well. We're going to talk about Kimbrel in a sec, I believe. So I'll stick with Cruz for now, but the impact of Nelson Cruz in this lineup would be amazing. Could you imagine his lineup or him along with people like, just everyone in the lineup? I can go through every single name. It makes the lineup so much better. Yes, it's not an area of need, but it makes the team better. I mean, you're adding somebody with an OPS plus of 157. Like that's pretty significant. It's not a minor tweak where you go like, he's here now, but you want to watch him hit, and him hitting makes this team even more powerful and even more strong in terms of making a run for the playoffs down the line. So I'm all for it. If the Jays want to pursue this, go for it. I trust the front office in terms of how aggressive they would be in pursuing Cruz. It's obviously not a guarantee to happen. Who knows how true it is? Like you said, it's a John Heyman report, so take it with a grain of salt. But it definitely gets me excited for the trade deadline coming in within the next 20, 30 days.
Yeah, I don't think it should be a priority, but I have no problem with the rich getting richer. Like, if the offense gets better, there's no complaints from me. Um, it's only positives. It's only pluses. Um, okay, you mentioned Craig Kimbrel. Yeah, this is a guy who would fit the Blue Jays picture of what they need, and I think honestly, like I said, I think the bullpen is close to done. I think it's one piece away from being done. Craig Kimbrel would be that one piece. Richard Rodriguez would be that one piece. You look at Kimbrel, he has, now this is not a mistake, but he has a 0.57 ERA this season. 29 games finished, 33 appearances, 20 saves, 31.2 innings, 0.57 ERA. It's just insane numbers. And to have that guy in the bullpen who's pretty much automatic, like he's given up 2 earned runs this season on 1 home run, 10 walks, 54 strikeouts. It's just automatic from him. You know what you're getting every time you go to him. And that's who the Blue Jays don't have in the bullpen. Even a guy like Jordan Romano, occasionally, he's going to blow up. He did a couple games ago. He gave up 2 runs. So having someone like Craig Kimbrel would do exactly that. Have him be an automatic guy in the bullpen. What I am worried about is that the Blue Jays might have to give up a little bit too much for him because of those numbers, because we know he's a premier reliever, one of the best in the game. And we know the Cubs, they're a smart organization, or at least they were before Theo Epstein left. They're not going to give him away for nothing. He is on an expiring contract. He has a team option for next year, which I don't know how much that is. He's on a 3-year, $43 million deal right now. Who knows whether the Blue Jays pick that up, depending how much money it is, if he gets traded. But that's my one concern with this. But overall, he would be, like we've said, exactly what the Blue Jays need in the bullpen.
I want this deal to happen. I'll say that right now. As long as
Okay.
the price is not astronomically high, make this deal, because as you mentioned with Romano, I trust Romano. Even if he does blow a game here and there, I still do trust him. But to have two, I would argue that to have 2 elite guys closing out games means that you're pretty much a lock for any safe situation. And take this in. Craig Kimbrel has played since 2010, so 11 seasons. He's only missed the All-Star game 3 times. One of them was in his first season with the Braves, And then in 2019, he missed it with the Cubs. Actually, I should say only 2 because 2020 there was no All-Star game. But he has made the All-Star team nearly every single team that or every year that he's played. And with the with the exception of his first 2 seasons with the Cubs, where he had a 6.53 ERA and a 5.28 ERA, his ERA, his career ERA, would probably be mid ones. Like this dude he's ridiculous. We saw him with the Red Sox. He's fantastic. I love his windup. It's very interesting. I'll still never forget the video that somebody showed me where people in the stands, like right behind home plate, were kind of doing the thing that he does with his arms, and it was a lot of fun. I think Blue Jay fans would embrace him, and if they get him, you better hope that they pick up that option. They have like the argument that I would make is they do have the money. Yes, they signed George Springer. Yes, they have Hyun Jin Ryu up for maybe like a combined 40-50 million dollars next year. But with aside from that, I would argue that they do have the money. They have a lot of guys on rookie contracts on close to league minimum. So these are guys that you could easily pick up as long as you keep them. Now that being said, if the Cubs do ask for multiple top prospects or a major league type caliber player, then you start to wonder, is it worth it for half a season with the potential of another season, or maybe you re-sign him or extend him? I don't know, but if the return is too high, no, I think that you'd be fine with Jordan Romano. But if you're able to get this deal done, why not? It'd be perfect. He knows. I mean, Craig Kimbrel's already faced the AL East. He was, like I said, with the Red Sox. He's faced all the teams. He knows how to get them out. I don't see it as a bad thing. I would for sure welcome this deal. And the Blue Jays would then, after that, the bullpen is completely done. You work with what you have. You've made your additions. You have the guys that you can still weed out and say, okay, you that were with our team previously, you come to the bullpen. You pitch well, or they see who's done well in the minors or in the on the major league bullpen, and then I think your bullpen set. Like the struggles that they had in May and in April and June might be over if they make one more move and then they take their best of the guys that were currently on the team. But this I think would solidify the bullpen 100%, and I would argue that it would maybe make the bullpen uh, top 10 in the league, something like that, because then that way you're lights out, especially in the back end. You definitely would trust most of, if not all, those guys.
Yeah, there's definitely still 1 to 2 pieces away, going back to what Mark said as well. And it's tricky because that team option definitely has more value to Craig Kimbrel's name, because obviously you feel like it'd get picked up, because if you don't pick it up, he's probably going to want more than $43 million based on the season he's had. He's on track for, I would say, his best season of his career besides his rookie year in 2010. That was only 21 games and 0.44 ERA. But anything like that, nothing's come close to it since. And he is on the best season of his career thus far. We know him well because of his 3 years with the Red Sox. Obviously, we know him really well, and he would be a massive addition to this bullpen, and something that the Jays definitely are going to pursue. I don't even think we need to call it a rumor, because I'm sure I'm sure every team is looking at Craig Kimbrel right now. So the Cubs have a lot of leverage in terms of what they're going to give up on him. They're obviously going to try and get a little bit more than usual from other teams. It depends how desperate teams are going to get. And that goes back to the point of the front office. Would Ross Atkins cave, or would Ross Atkins fold and give them more? Probably not. I doubt it, because of what they have done so far. Unless I could be wrong. It definitely could. It can go either way. But for Craig Kimbrel, an 0.57 ERA, like you guys mentioned, a WHIP 0.66. This guy's been dominant all year. And besides of his 2 years with the Cubs before this year, I don't really look too much into it, just because obviously 2019 was when he was signed in almost July. And I guess he jumped right into things. He didn't really have a lot of time to get going, and 2020 was 2020. So I don't really look at his first 2 years with the Cubs as much of a concern. And going back to his years with Boston, San Diego, even Atlanta, those are dominant numbers, and they're consistent. 46 saves, 42 saves. Each year he's had, saves at least over 30 and over. So it's definitely good to see. And he would be a good piece of this bullpen if you move Jordan Romano down, maybe a setup man in the 8th inning. It's a good 1-2 punch. And even somebody in the 7th inning, like maybe Trevor Richards or even Adam Simber. It's a really good 1-2-3 punch that could potentially be on the rise. And of course, you can't count out Richard Rodriguez as well. We talked about him last week. The problem with him too is he's going to be expensive just because he's under team control until 2024. So he has arbitration starting next year, and then going up to 2024. He's going to cost a lot as well. So basically, with these relievers, if the Jays want to go after people of this high caliber, it's going to be expensive. The question is how expensive it's going to be. And I don't really think it matters between Rodriguez and Kimbrel. They're both going to be very expensive. There's so many other names, Jose Barrios, that can also maybe circulate back towards the Jays as the Twins get closer to the trade deadline. I'm sure they're going to be, I don't think they've really announced anything yet in terms of them buying or selling, but it looks like they're going to be selling based on what people are saying all over, I guess, baseball. So I wouldn't be surprised with that as well. And, people like Craig Kimbrel, that's one of maybe a couple more pieces the Jays have to go for the bullpen. Maybe it's just one more to go. And if you add him, if you add somebody like Nelson Cruz, all of these rumors, all of us know, not every one of these is going to happen, but it's definitely good news to see that the Jays are involved in this. It feels good for them to be buying again. Kind of missed that in terms of them having to be sellers the past few years. It's definitely not a good feeling as good of a feeling as it is to buy. So that's why I'm very intrigued to see what Shapiro and Atkins are going to do. And someone like Craig Kimbrel, I just didn't really understand until maybe early on in the season when the Cubs went on that 11-game winning streak before they obviously fell off. It was how dominant he really has been. So it took me a little bit to realize that. And, with Kimbrel too, it's just, Mark, you've seen him a lot too, just because of the Boston area. He's just a high class pitcher. I remember when I went to Fenway in 2019, he had a kind of a really cool intro coming out of the bullpen in the 9th inning. So he'd be definitely loved here. And I think a lot of us know who he is pretty well. So we'll see what happens with that. But it looks like the Cubs as well are going to be sellers left, right, and center. Chris Bryant's also going to be shopped. Maybe Kyle Hendricks is going to be shopped. So there's a lot of options in terms of the market this year. I think it's starting to circulate a little bit more now as teams are starting to lean towards if they're going to buy or sell, and teams that are going to sell, the market's going to take form very quickly. So I think we're seeing that right now. So we'll see what happens after the All-Star break if the Jays get something done for either Kimbrel, Rodriguez, or even Cruz.
Yeah, and I think every closer for the Red Sox has kind of a awesome intro. I think it's Matt Barnes right now, if I remember correctly. But whoever comes in the 9th at Fenway, they always do a crazy intro, and it's a lot of fun with their walk-up song stuff. But even though the Blue Jays are probably going to lose when they're bringing in their closer, Kimbrel would be amazing. There's to wrap up what we've said over the last 15 minutes, it would be incredible. And there's nothing short of that. Okay, we'll wrap up the podcast there. Thank you to everyone who listened to this episode. As always, you can find us on social media at Section 138 Pod. That's on Instagram and Twitter. You can support our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Section 138 Pod. You can rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts to help spread the word about what we're doing. And our podcasts are available to watch on YouTube. So if you enjoy consuming our content that way instead of just by audio only, you can check that out. And if you're watching this video, you can listen to the podcast as well. So thanks to everyone who listened to this episode. We'll catch you next time for the first half finale with a season. I'll look back at the first half of the season, and a look back at this series against the Rays, which hopefully goes well, but we'll catch you then.